As the final boxes were cleared out of the attic, an envelope or a booklet or something fashioned out of paper fell out of the bottom of a trunk. They saw the initials DBL and the tiny little name Demy, 8 years old. Now they knew Demy was their grandfather's name, and 1909 would have been right. But they had no idea what this had to do with an elephant or this old folio. What they found inside introduced them to a side of their grandfather they never knew. Hi everyone, it's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to another interpretation of Dephemerember 2022. I had been doing pretty good on the prompts and then I hit a major roadblock this week and I missed 4 days this week and then I missed number 3. So I've missed 5 days altogether. December 3rd, December 6th, 7th, 8th, and today is 9th. That's 5 days. So what I wanted to do was try to take all 5 days, all the prompts, all the animals, all the materials, and combine it into one challenge. Can I do it? And can I include a story with it? Oh, what a challenge, but I did. And this little grungy, very grungy, folderish, folio-ish, I don't even know what it is not only a 5-day compilation of all those prompts and materials, but a story about a very special little boy named Demy who was all alone and found his family with the animals. Join me, won't you? Here I am again, friends. Behind. Are you behind? Are you feeling like all of these wonderful prompts are so much fun to watch and to work with, but that you're just struggling to find the time? I know I am. And I'm definitely behind, 5 days behind, as I mentioned before. I have all these things that I need to incorporate in this challenge to catch up. A bright color, a journal card, feathers, a bingo card, a handwritten memory, a loaded tag, beads, junk mail, postage stamp dangle, collage fodder. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. But I know I can do it. I also know I have to make sure the bear and the elephant and the penguin and the butterflies are included, not to mention the mystery animal going into this video I didn't know about. I didn't know which animal would be picked on day 9, so I know I have to incorporate that as well. So let me get started and see what I can do to catch up on Dephemerember. Like any project, I find the best place to start is a place of inspiration. So I went through all my old vintage goodies, looking for things that included animals that I needed to incorporate, and I found this old composition book cover. Inside of this was a journal about expressions kids say, and it was made by a woman named Emily. I bought her entire collection of paper, 4 generations of paper, probably a few years ago. And I loved this cover. I loved the elephant and the feather in its mouth. I loved the color. It was such a cool design. And I loved his spectacles. And it was just super, super tatty. I mean, I don't know why I held on to it, but I just thought it was cool. And that is going to become the cover of our project. I also have an extensive collection of circus ephemera. I don't know why, but I am so intrigued by the circus. Vintage circus, the romance of it, the atmosphere of it, the costumes. I mean, I know that the circus is a very dark side, and I'm not going to go into that today, but I have this thing about the circus. Don't ask me why. So anyway, I have this collection, and I thought I would use that as well. I definitely need a snack going in, and this is one of my all-time favorites. This is a Heath bar. It's a chocolate bar that has been around forever. Milk chocolate over English toffee. There's something about the combination that I just love, and I love anything that's toffee. I love that sort of butter praline taste. And hopefully this little burst of sugar will be enough to get me on my way and get this project created. So here I have the cover, and I love the cover, but it's super tatty and it's too big. So I just scanned it, and put it through my computer and printed it off much smaller. And I put a background behind it because the edges were so tatty. That way, where the edges are all frayed, there's something behind there that makes sense. It doesn't just look blank. I'm just going to fold it and cut it out. And this is going to become the cover of my folio or whatever it is I'm making. I don't even know what I'm making at the time that I'm cutting this out. I put it on craft paper, so it's pretty heavy. And I do know that I want this cover to be very old and tatty. I don't have a storyline in my head yet for this prompt, but I do know I want to make a pretty in-depth collage on the center of the folio. So I collect a bunch of little tiny pieces of collage fodder. There I go. Number 1, collage fodder. Let's check that one off the list. And now I'm going to take this large craft envelope and use that on the other side of this cover. I figure this will give me a great base for the collage. It'll also give me space for a couple big pockets. And in my head, I don't really know what the storyline is. I'm just sort of letting it develop as I go. But in my head, I have this idea about a photo album, like an old-timey photo album where the animals are framed. And I can picture it in my head. I don't really know what it means yet. I'm just going to let this unfold. I'm going to open the envelope, and that's going to be the base of this folio. And the reason I'm going to open the envelope is because I want to sew on the cover. And I don't want to sew the envelope together because I want to be able to use the pocket. So I bring it over to my sewing machine and I just sew this to the front of the I want to make sure that a bingo card, which is another thing I need to use, can go in the pocket. So I sew on the cover, and now I need to glue the flaps again. If I had sewn it, I was afraid I was going to sew into the pocket too much and make the pocket too small. So this way, by sewing first, the pocket still will have its full length. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully it does. I'm going to cut off these flaps because they're not really useful to me anymore. I'll fold one of them in, and then the other one I have to cut off. I'm going to fold the folio, and then I'm going to, I got to make sure I really fold it with my bone folder because this is kind of thick. Between the envelope and the craft paper, this has some heft to it. It definitely, it's definitely a thick piece, so I need to make sure that it's folding fine. So I'm going to glue the flaps of the envelope back the way that they were so that the pockets will be intact. And then I have this program, an original 1920s vintage circus program. I'm thinking it's about 100 years old. I couldn't find a date on it. Now, for all of you who hear that we scan things in and then use it, don't get intimidated by that. If you don't have a scanner, just use your copy machine. Just use your printer on copy. That's all I did here. My printer is covered with all sorts of like little decor stuff because I barely ever use that feature. I just slid the book under. Look, they're not even straight, and just pushed copy, copy, copy. And this again is another piece of collage fodder, old book pages. And it didn't really matter to me if it was straight and what exactly I got. I just wanted background text that was all about the circus. And I'm going to end up just trimming these pieces and gluing them down so that they give me a good base for my collage in the background. I didn't want to destroy that program because it really is hard to find vintage pieces like that intact, and it's part of my collection. So copying it makes it super easy, no guilt. And I definitely encourage you to use the printing feature of your printer anytime you have something that you think is a little precious that you don't want to use the original, but maybe you don't want to put it through software program and make it, like digitally edit it. You just want to photocopy it. It works. It totally works. Okay, so now I have my base, and I'm going to start deciding about the collage. I have to start playing around with the layout And I don't really know what I want to do other than the frames of the animals. And framing the animals up as they are would be kind of boring. It would just be too simple. And I want it to convey the feeling of the circus, which is energetic and colorful and loud. And, you know, I don't know. There's just a special kind of a feeling, an aesthetic of the circus that I want to definitely convey. And I don't really know why these animals are framed. Like, I don't know the storyline yet. And if you know anything about the circus is supposedly this very exciting and joyful and gleeful entity that comes to your town and brings excitement, and you get to go with your family and you get to see all these exciting acrobats and magicians and oddities and animals. But there's also this really dark side too, right? I mean, the circus, I don't even want to think about how they got the animals and how they treated them and the people and things like that. There was a lot in the background of circuses. So I think what I want to focus on here is that these animals, for some reason, are special. And I also want to focus on the fact that maybe they're all together because they left the circus. Why did these animals leave the circus? I'm not sure. I do know that, just a little personal note here, my brother-in-law has been a zookeeper for several decades now at a really incredible zoo in the United States. And their focus is education and rescuing animals. And I know a lot of zoos are like that. They take animals that have been kept by humans and can't keep them anymore. You know, the exotic pet trade, not a good thing for animals. Or they've been hurt, or they've unfortunately hurt people, so they need to be taken out and not destroyed. And this zoo does education and gives them a really wonderful life with plenty of space and great nutrition, and they use them as ambassadors to teach about how to take care of our natural world. So I'm going to believe that these animals were rescued and put in that kind of a situation. There are some really responsible and important zoos that function to help animals, and that is what my storyline in my little naive head is going to be. So I'm going to take pieces of ephemera. Here's some of the things I use. I'm using price tags. I'm using stamped labels. Right here, this is an old book that I've just taken a red stamp and highlighted pieces of the illustration and then cut out. This is a piece of book page behind this gold frame. The same thing. I've taken a stamp of a framed stamp, rubber stamp, and I've just highlighted text in a book and cut that out. There's tickets and labels, and some of the tickets are new. They're just scrapbook paper that had labels and tickets on them that I cut out. Some of them are vintage book page. Some of them are Tim Holtz stamps that I've stamped onto like manila paper. Manila paper. Remember in school we used to call it vanilla paper? Or maybe that was just me. And I'm just making a aesthetically pleasing collage where there's some really intriguing pieces, but there isn't anything that's the main focal point. I think if anything, of the main focal point, it might be the frame that I put right in the center, because that's maybe where your eye would travel. But what I want to do is sort of evenly distribute these ephemera pieces so there isn't one piece that's making your eye go to it. Your eye just sort of sees the whole collage, because the focal point of this piece is going to be the animals and their frames. And that's really what I want to concentrate on. And I'm taking my weeding tool, and I'm taking these little washi stickers and putting numbers down of the days that I missed. Number 3, number 6, 7, 8, and 9. I'm putting those numbers within this collage to cover those 4 prompts. And it's challenging to do a very busy collage. I'm still learning that and honing that skill, but I find it very challenging in a good way. I really love the idea of balance and trying to get a color palette that's pleasing and makes sense and doesn't, no one piece just screams at you. Do you see that little mouse piece? I absolutely love that little illustration. Last year sometime there was a video of people taking framed rubber stamps, like rubber stamp sets that are frames, and then just going in old books and highlighting text and illustrations and cutting them out. And I did a whole bunch. And I find that collage fodder to be really cool to work with. It's interesting and fun and vintage, and here's my layout. And now when I put these dark frames of the animals on them, they stand out. But I do need to blend that background a little bit. I'm going to give myself a little treat, a little circus peanut, because that makes sense, right? And right now, that's exactly what I want to do, is sort of bring down some of the stronger pieces so everything is visually on the same level. So I've just splattered and made a mess of my desk using white paint. And now I'm going to come in with watercolor and I'm going to stain little areas to make it look like water damage, to essentially make like coffee staining, except I'm just using the browns in my watercolor set. And I can control it with my paintbrush and make it look like foxing, the brown areas of an old books where it oxidizes. And maybe it looks a little bit like some water damage, right? Some water damage hit that book. And now I am mixing some gold paint because, this is the circus and we need a little bling. So I'm going to splatter some gold paint around, and I'm even going to touch it a little bit with my brush. And I've taken some ads from the circus program and again photocopied them, and I'm cutting them out because I know I need to make a journal card. That's one of the pieces of the prompt. And I need to make a loaded tag. Look at me, I'm hitting all the boxes now. This is a vintage soda label for root beer, and I think it kind of has that circus feel. I like the way it looks. I love that root beer. It kind of feels like something you'd have at the circus. And I have this authentic bingo card from Milton Bradley, which was in Massachusetts, only a couple hours from me. I trim off the bottom. Unfortunately, I can't keep that piece, but the bingo card's just a little bit too long. And that's going to be the base of my loaded tag. So I'm going to take the root beer label and I'm going to glue it on the back of the bingo card, and then I'm going to put that, that loaded tag die that I think most people are familiar with at this point. Either you have the die or you've handmade it yourself, cutting it out. It's really useful when you're making a loaded tag, and it's been around for many years. I'm going to use that on this piece. I'm taking an extra piece of the label because I want to put that on the bottom, and I'm using some film strip washi tape. And I do have this scrapbook paper of the circus, and I'm trying to see if that can be handy somewhere. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm now going to decorate this loaded tag die, and I really don't want to oxidize it, so I decide I'm going to do embossing. I'm very new to embossing. I just bought my first embossing powders. I'm certainly late to this game, and I want to try it out. So I have some of the Tim Holtz embossing powder. I think this is Crackling Fire. Is that the name of it? See, I don't even know the names of the embossing colors that well because like I said, this is a material I've not really explored before. So I am putting it all over this tag and making a mess, and I'm going to take my heat gun off camera because my space is so small, and I'm going to emboss it. And here it is. It's not perfect, but that's fine because I'm going to be decorating it. It kind of has this metal look to it, which I like. I wouldn't say copper, but looks maybe like some form of metal, like a tin, but tin is silver. I don't know. Some kind of metal, and it works for me. And I'm going to take a little piece of this scrapbook paper that has a polka dot on it in red, and I'm going to put that on the front. And that's going to become the base of my loaded tag. Well, not the base. I already have my base. It's going to become the structure of the organization. I don't know. This die cut is the thing that you put, the pocket. That's what I'm going to call it, the pocket of this loaded tag. Whew. It's hard sometimes to come up with words, especially when you're talking for as long as I'm talking. And I'm going to glue down this little piece just to make it more interesting. I love how root beer shines through and the little pieces of the tag of the label shine through. Not that we'll see it when it's loaded, but I like that. And now I need the junk mail. Look at me, bingo card and junk mail right there. Let's check it off our list. Check and check. So now I'm going to just cut this junk mail in half and empty the pocket because I think I'm going to use this piece of acetate, the little window. I want to put it in the front of the bingo card so that I can see the bingo card, but it also becomes a pocket. And this bingo card with the organizer on the back and the pocket on the front will end up being the loaded tag. Clever. See what I did there? When I measured up, I see that the window's a little bit too big for the bingo card, and I'm afraid to trim it down because I want that framing. So first of all, I'm going to take the top part off so that the bingo looks like it's poking out of the pocket. And then I'm going to try to decide what I exactly need to make this pocket structurally good and aesthetically pleasing. So you saw me put some washi tape at the top, and now I am taking oxide ink, distress ink, and I put some on, I sprayed some onto a acrylic block, and now I'm just staining the outside area of the window so that the bright white is not white anymore. I don't have a huge variety of oxide inks. I have some. So some of this is distressed, some of it is oxide, and I sprayed it on the acrylic block, and I'm just lightly tapping it into the pieces that I want the ink on. I hope that makes sense. And then I'm going to try to get that distress oxide ink to, do its thing, do its exciting thing. I'm using some, vintage photo spray, some walnut spray, some aged mahogany spray, and here's my bright color. I can check this off my list. I'm using peacock feathers. I like the idea of having a color that does not meld into the normal colors of this project so that it really stands out, and that little pop of bright color will really enhance this tag. So again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just tapping it in, and now I'm trying to move the color around where it was bleeding, so that, bleeding into itself. So that looks interesting. And now I'm going to let it dry. Hi friends, look it's day 2. This is as far as I got last night. And I'm grateful to be combining so many prompts so that I can catch up. So this is what it looks like today. I'm so excited to be working in natural light. That's kind of a nice thing because I've been doing them at night. So this is how it ended up drying. I obviously need to do more work on the front. The bingo card dried really nice. I love all that grungy. And of course the colors blended here, which made a new color, which was because I didn't let it dry. And that's okay. I have the embossed folder here, which I like it. It's kind of like, it reminds me of like metal, like maybe like a copper or something like that. So I think that works well. And I have a little bit, I'll finish this tag today. And then this piece of the recycled envelope has dried, and that will be going over here somehow. I'm going to be figuring out how I'm going to be adding that. I will figure that out in a moment. And I actually was considering maybe putting it on the back so it could slide in, but I really don't think I want to do that. I don't really know what I want to do. Anyway, let's just continue on. So today, the big nervousness for me was, what was the fourth animal going to be? I already have the elephant and the bear and the penguin, and I already had their places picked out. And then I had this fourth frame that I had planned right here. So I, number one, needed an animal that was going to go side to side. And second of all, I was really hoping it was going to be something like the fish or the seahorse, because, yeah, they're not in a zoo. So I was really hoping it would be, honestly, I was really hoping it was going to be like, I don't know, an animal, another animal. But I was okay, maybe the peacock. But it's the partridge, which I do like that it's facing this way. So it's got really great balance between two animals going this way and two animals going this way. The only problem is I can fit it in like this sideways, but I think it will look a lot better up and down. I just don't know if the up and down frame, I guess it would do just fine. I just need to maybe slide it over just a little bit. I don't know. I feel like the balance might be a little off now, but let's put the, here I liked the balance better, but I just don't feel like the partridge looks as good sideways. Does it? Maybe it does. I guess this way we get the full head and the chest, and it fits well just like this bird does. Here, I feel like there's just too much white space. It just doesn't make sense that way. So I'm going to do it this way, and I'll make it balanced. Okay, and now that I know all my animals, I can start framing up the partridge, and I can start working on the photo frame aspect of this layout. So I'm going to put the partridge behind the frame, and this frame is gold and the other three are black, and I want them to balance. So I'm going to take out my gilding wax, and this frame, which is a die cut from Tim Holtz, has, you know, a lot of embossed details on it. So I want to take my finger lightly with gilding wax and bring out those details. I don't want to take the black down too much because I like that to be the focal point, but I like to highlight it with the gold. It makes the frames look very 3D and vintage and cool. And then I'm going to take the gold frame and I'm going to add some black to the frame. So the black I added gold, and the gold I added black. And now I'm going to glue them down. And I really love how they look on top of this collage. It is very much what I pictured in my head of a photo album, and I'm still working on the storyline of why the animals are in a photo album and why these animals in particular were moved to the zoo, but I have faith that the storyline will present itself. And I've also decided now I need another animal in here because I don't like the white space on the left side. I mean, I know there's really no white space. It's a busy collage. But I feel like the balance of the frames is off now that it's not a horizontal frame. I'm going to take these large paper clips and put them on top of the frames just to make them adhere better. I'm going to go through my animals and figure out which animals I want to choose. And I can't go rogue on, I've already gone too far in the process of picking the animals that Barbara actually picks on the days. So I'm like, okay, I need to pick an animal we've already used. And we've already used the giraffe. So I feel like that's within the framework of the rules. As you can tell, I'm a rule follower. And I can justify using the giraffe. Now, that's not to say everybody who's doing their own thing is doing something wrong. You're not. I just happen to be a little bit too much of a rule follower. Ugh, I hate that about myself. But anyway, I kind of wanted to challenge myself by actually using the things that were picked by Luise and Barbara. So now I'm using the butterflies because the butterflies were picked as one of the days that I missed. So now I'll have all the animals that were chosen and used in this collage. And that makes my rule following self happy. And I'm going to go in and add some black splatter dots with my rubber stamp. All right, let's deal with the cover now. I want to do something interesting on the seam, on the back, the spine. But this red ribbon is just not thick enough. It will never stay on. So I decided to do it a little grungy and sideways, kind of like it's holding the two covers together. I like this red silk ribbon. I think it's silk, maybe it's not, but the shiny ribbon, because it reminds me of maybe a trim that might have been on a woman's costume. And I try to think about things that could be in the circus. But I decide I want to firm up that spine with some washi tape. It's got a lot of numbers on it. It's Tim Holtz. It's very vintage. So I'm going to run that along each side of the spine just to finish it off and to give it some strength. And then I'm going to glue the satin ribbon or the silk ribbon, whatever it is, sideways. And I have to take down the Fabri-Tac so it doesn't bleed through. I trim off the edges and then I try to fray them a little bit because I, again, want this to look very tatty and grungy and old. And I'm just going to glue them down. This is more ornament than anything. This is a really strong piece between the craft paper and the envelope and the collage. This is a very strong piece. I really don't need anything holding the spine together, but I want it to look like it's old and being held together. I want it to look very handmade and very much like somebody put this together. Ooh, who put this together? The story is starting to unfold. Who put this folio together with the animal's picture on it? Let me put a little label on it. I found a couple little digital kit labels that I had cut out. One says 1910 on it, I think, and that fits like a great time period for the circus. And I think I want to put some splatters and some things on the cover that just make it look really grungy and old. And I get some white gesso because, of course, I always love to put some white splatters on things. And then I smudge some white paint all over the cover. And just as I'm starting to really get annoyed with my messy self, I kind of get this idea about water damage. Let's make this look like it has been through it. Let's give this cover some water damage. I love when I don't like water damage things, don't get me wrong, but when I'm at an estate sale and I find something that has water damage in it, it's like it's part of its story and journey. So I'm putting gold paint on the accent of the feather. Okay, that's another one of my prompts, feather, right here. Let's check that off. And I'm going to let that dry, the gold paint and the white splatters. And I'm going to start thinking about how I'm going to get that water damage really in this book. So what I decide to do is take some of my oxide crayons because, like I said, I don't have a lot of oxide. So how am I going to get this water damage inside the cover or make it look like it with those colors when I don't really have a lot of oxides to react? Well, I'm going to try the things I do have. I do have a few sprays. I do have 1 or 2 ink pads, and I do have these pencils, the watercolor pencils that Tim Holtz just came out with are also oxide. So I'm going to add some color to the cover, and I can't honestly say it works that good. I don't know how you guys feel about these pencils, but this is what I'm finding with them. On certain papers, they're amazing. They're buttery soft. They blend well. I'm getting great results. And then on other papers, they don't work at all. I feel like the quality of the pencil depends on the paper you're using it. And I'm finding the pencil on this craft paper just really doesn't work that well. I start using it on the white piece of junk mail on the right just to see if I can maybe transfer some color over. You'll see me do that. And, but yeah, I'm just really struggling to get the water damage color that I want in my head on here. It's slowly coming together, but I guess because I lack all those distress inks. But it's hard. They're expensive, right? I can't always be spending money on this. So I'm going to use a little of that bright blue. And I think maybe I'll be able to get a reaction that will look very much like water damage. And in the end, it does. It almost has that little bit of an oil slick look, like it dropped into something that had gas or whatever, a little iridescent. And in the end, it comes out good, but it was a lot more effort to get that look than I had hoped. But hey, it's all about experimenting, right? So now I'm putting down some labels on the cover. This one has a date. I believe it's 1909, which fits in with the time period of the program and this composition book cover that I used. And do you see that little piece of paper in the top right-hand corner? That one right there. That one. It's very delicate, and it's from 1910 as well. It's authentic. It's from a book I have. And when I looked up close, I saw something really interesting, a little name, Demy, and what looked like the words 8 years old. And I thought, that's my storyline. This is Demy's. This is Demy's folio. So let's monogram it for Demy. So I need a D for his first name, but what are his other whatever are the other letters of his monogram going to be? So I decided to pick B and L, one for Barbara and one for Luise, since they're the originators of this series. And I figure it's very appropriate to have their names in this as well. So I'm going to pretend that Demy's monogram is DBL. And I think that has a nice little flow to it. So I'm going to use my embossing pad and stamp those 3 letters. And then I'm going to use that embossing powder that I used on the tag. I think it's Crackling Fire on the letters. And then I'm going to emboss it. I'm going to use my heat gun and hope this monogram comes out great. And then that'll finish off the cover. It'll look like this tatty thing that Demy made, and there it is. The monogram came out super good. There it is, Demy, 8 years old. So now the storyline is starting to come about. See that little clown in the right-hand side? I think that was Demy. I think that represented Demy at 8 years old in the circus. Okay, now I'm starting to get a flow because I'm starting to get the storyline. And I know we don't need a storyline to make a pretty or an interesting piece, but it helps me. So I'm adding that shiny ribbon again that now I'm thinking Demy got from one of the acrobats or somebody in the circus. And that's going to give a place for the bingo card to get glued to. It'll make that envelope the right size, the little window on the front. It'll give a little shiny edge to the back. And I like that. So I'm going to clip it so that it dries nice and flat. And I'm going to continue to work on this tag. I'm going to take my crocodile and punch a hole and put in an eyelet there, because that gives me the opportunity to put a textile in for the top of the tag. And this is my loaded tag, which I already crossed off the list. So I'm starting to make sure I have all of those things that I needed. And I'm going to put in a little piece of lace. Again, a little feminine with the very grungy masculine of this piece. And I'm going to start loading the tag with little tickets. I have this awesome little fortune teller canasta card that I love. And I'm just loading the tag with little circus type pieces. And you're going to see this changes in a minute. But this is what I do at first. And now I need something for this envelope in the front. And I'm looking at my ads. I don't really like it. I'm not feeling it. I don't really know what I want. And then I decide, what if I have a picture of Demy? So let me look through all of my little snapshots that I have. These are Tim Holt's, I don't even know what this is called. Vintage photo booth, I think. And I'm looking for, where's Demy? What does Demy look like? Are any of these guys Demy? And, ooh, look at that. He looks like he's from a circus, but that's not Demy. I know that's not Demy. That is the ringleader, the circus ringleader. And the guy right here is Demy, this young gentleman right here with a big grin who looks a little awkward in the photo, like he's not used to taking photos, is Demy. And I'm grunging up the back because these are old photos, and I'm going to put a little date on the back of 1910. And now I decide these are going to go in the front. But I have this moment where I'm like, the back totally doesn't go aesthetically. This is all bright and happy and kind of cutesy, and that does not go with the vibe of this piece. So I'm going to take all those pieces out because they just don't fit. I'm going to use the grungy tickets that I referred to in my other video, the one I used Luise's jazzing up the scraps technique in. And I'm going to put those tickets in. And I think I'm going to put the picture of the ringleader, the circus ringleader in. I'm going to believe that he's the one who brought Demy in, who found Demy, an orphan. Maybe he was riding the train, or maybe he was in a town and he wandered in the circus. And he gave him a job, and that's where Demy found his place in life at the beginning. And the funny thing is now, as I'm working, all I can think about is Demy's story. And before you write in the comments that it doesn't really say 8 years old, I know that. It's an English address, and I think it's 8VO. But the first time I looked at that little label, I saw 8 years old. So now I want to make a journal card. So let's add that to my list. Journal card, check. Taking care of that right now. And I'm taking a piece of scrapbook paper from that circus pad, and I'm just going to glue this ad, which I really think is cool, this circus aches and pains ad, which is fun. And I'm going to glue it on so that I have that background. And I left a little bit of that black trim sticking out the left because I thought that was a nice little touch. Throw it in my sewing machine, put some stitches in around the corner, and basically make a journaling card. And as I'm inking this, I'm thinking, what is this journaling card going to be all about? Is it going to be blank, or is it going to be something that Demy has written? And I believe it's something Demy has written. So I take an old piece of ledger, put it through my typewriter. There's a couple mistakes in it, which are very intentional because I want it to look like, you know, a young boy who maybe isn't the most literate typed it. And now I feel like this is all coming together. I want to have a closure, so I'm going to take the crocodile and punch a hole and put in an eyelet and attach a piece of twine. This folio I picture being made by a young boy who is just getting out of the circus, and he's probably maybe 14, and let's face it, 14-year-old boys probably aren't the neatest. And he's using things he can find at the circus, and twine is something he can use. So I'm putting the tag in this pocket. I have the journaling card on the other side, and I can tie this up. And now I feel like this project is finally coming together with a little bit of heart and story. And lastly, I need to make my postage stamp and dangle and bead. So I need to check all of these off. But I don't want it to be too pretty or cutesy because, again, just like the fortune teller card, I want it to fit in the aesthetic. So I have this sticker that's supposed to look like an old circus stamp. It has an elephant on it and it says Big Show. I cut it down and I stick it on two of the tickets that I had made look really grungy in another video. I'll link that below if you want to see. I'm going to glue it together so that it has a little bit of structure to it. And now I'm going to make this into the center of the dangle. Now I could put glossy accents on it, but I'll be waiting 24 hours for that to dry. So I'm going to use this frosted crystal embossing powder. Again, there was a big sale on Black Friday, and I just bought a bunch of things to try out, and it's kind of cool. It looks literally like it's a frosted piece of glass, I guess. Maybe not even glass, but it does have a neat look. It strengthens it and it makes it look more finished. And it is very grungy looking. It's doesn't look like something polished, which I don't think Demy would have anything polished. I picture him sleeping in a tent with a footlocker box and just the few scraps, odds and ends that he picks up along the way. And now I need to finish the dangle. So I'm going to put some holes in, and I put some really messy stitches from my sewing machine in. And now I'm going to attach one of those, similar to the thing Barbara used. It's like a keychain attacher. I don't really know what it's called. It's not Tim Holtz. This one is not Tim Holtz. It's a different brand. And then I found this button that looks like the kind of button that ladies in the 1900s would have on their shoe. Or they might be on a vest, like a very fancy circus vest, and you pull it through. And I picture it to be something that Demy found, and he's just added to this little dangle. And then at the bottom, I'm attaching a key, the key to his footlocker. And I'm going to put that all together and add that to the spine of Demy's little folio here. So here it is, Demy's little folio of his time with the circus. The years leading up to the time when the animals left him and went into protection in a zoo. His family, the only family he knew. Attached is a little tiny ticket, probably from the popcorn stand or from a ride or from one of the sideshows, with a button that was probably on a boot of one of the patrons sitting in the stands. Demy loved to walk through the stands after the shows and look for treasures. A tiny key to his footlocker, which had everything that he ever owned inside. And inside, the photos of the animals that he took care of, the animals that had become family to him, the only family he ever knew. The giraffe and the partridge, the bear and the penguin, and of course the elephant, his trusted friends. Inside is a little note for whoever found it. And Demy used an old typewriter, and not to say he did not make a few mistakes. And he wrote, "Once upon a time, there was an 8-year-old boy named Demy. He was all alone in the world, except for the animals who he called his family." And on this side, this is Demy when the circus ended and the animals went into the zoo. This represents Demy when he was 8, and he started with the circus, and he was just an assistant to a clown. And this is probably him about 15 or 16 years old. And on the back side, some collected tickets and a picture of the ringleader who took him in and let him stay and make a family with the circus. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me make this story of Demy and his animal friends, of making this extremely tatty folio that has seen better days and had hidden secrets about his life as a boy. I envision that this is a part of his life that was joyous and painful. And when he left, he didn't speak of it again until his grandchildren found this in a trunk after he had passed, maybe decades after he had passed. A tiny little photo album of all the animals in his time with the circus. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you hopefully very soon. Bye.